Was it the voice? Was it the fire burning in me?
I'm a little embarrassed to tell you there's not measurements that go along with that. Just measure with your heart and that will be good enough. And that is it. It has been a while that I'm still making this. Hope that it gets done in time.
I've been high. I've been high. Lately I've been
Hello friends, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you some more budget-friendly family dinner ideas. This week, I am sticking with a $100 budget for all of our meals, and I feel like as of yesterday, I was sitting here trying to figure out next week's meals. And I feel like I somewhat cracked the code in a way, because I feel like I have a plan moving forward for the rest of the month to also be on a very strict budget, but be able to make it work and not feel as if, you know, we are making a bunch of struggle meals. So definitely follow along because I will be getting into that in my next video. I know that I've shared quite a few of these recently. However, I know that so many people are struggling with grocery prices recently, us included. I often talk about how much we spend on groceries every week, and I just feel like that's completely out of hand. And so I am trying my absolute hardest to get our grocery budget down each week. And I know that so many of you are also doing the same. So I figured while I am testing out new recipes or trying to get my budget down each week, I figured I would share with you the stuff that I am making for my family that creates leftovers and dinners and sometimes desserts, stuff that we can make on a smaller budget. So the first meal that I am starting with is something that I call crunchy onion chicken, and I'm making some cheesy potatoes that I'm going to throw in the crock pot and hopefully get done in time for dinner. I will have some of today's recipes that I didn't necessarily walk you through down below in the description box if you're interested in any of those. Okay, I have the potatoes all sliced in the crock pot. They're all about this thin. And I did grease the edges of the crock pot. It said to spray it and stuff, assuming because there's a lot of cheese and stuff, it will end up sticking. So I feel like it's still gonna stick, but I did add the grease just to, you know, help with that. So now I'm going to add in the remainder of the ingredients, and I'm going to cook it on high because of course I cannot get my life together and it is in the afternoon. So I have a couple hours before dinner. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that this will be done. Anyway, it is not very many ingredients. You'll just salt and pepper. I'm gonna add a little bit more. If you have fresh garlic, you can mince that up. I don't usually have that. Sometimes I'll have garlic, but I have just powdered garlic, so that's what I'm going to add. It said a quarter of a cup of chicken broth. I have some chicken bone broth that I made earlier this week, so I'm going to use that. And I'm going to add a little bit extra juice. I forgot to strain it before, that's why I'm doing it now. Okay, and then if you know me, you've been here a while, I never have like heavy whipping cream unless I specifically bought it for something like a recipe. But other than that, I don't usually have it. But I always have evaporated milk, and evaporated milk is perfect for recipes like this. It's something that I always have on hand. So I think you needed a cup. Let me double check. I think we need, yes, 1 cup. So if you have heavy whipping cream, you can use that.
I'm going to use this whole can of evaporated milk. And then it said Parmesan cheese and cheddar. I managed to find some Parmesan cheese. Didn't think I had it. I have about this much left in the bag, so I'm just gonna use it all. And then it says about 2 cups of cheddar. So I'll add in a couple little handfuls. I'm gonna give it a good stir, and then that is it. I'm gonna start it and hope that it will be ready in a couple of hours when we make dinner. As you can see, I have mine set for 4 hours on high. I have about 4 hours until dinner time, so I think it should be fine. But here's what they look like, and I'll see you back here in just a little bit. These have been cooking just a little over an hour. They're looking good, but they're still not done, so we still have a couple of hours, but I wanted to get started on some rolls and the chicken that I'm gonna be making tonight, so let's get started on that. I'm gonna start over here on the rolls first because our yeast is already ready, and then that way we have plenty of time to let them rise before dinner. So this is 1 cup of warm water. It is a package of quick rise yeast, or 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast, and then 1/4 cup of sugar. So now I'm going to add in 1 egg, 3 1/4 cup of flour, and then 3 tablespoons of really soft butter. And I think I made these last week. If you saw that video, I made them actually twice. This is like a new favorite, something that I keep making. They have very few ingredients, and they're pretty easy. So I like doing them. They're delicious also, so.
I did have someone ask last time about this recipe being made into a loaf of bread. I still have not gone that far. However, I did experiment a little bit in making these into like buns, and it did work out really well. So I feel like it would also work out as a loaf of bread.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get that started, and we'll see if we need to add any more flour to the mix.
There are a couple different variations of this recipe that I have found, but the one that I like most, you can search on my channel under Amish dinner roll, and that is the recipe that I continuously use. It is a very easy one, and it's delicious every time.
Okay, that dough is done. I didn't need to add any more, so I'm covering it, and I'm gonna go put it on the stove while we work on the chicken. Okay, so tonight I'm going to be making some what I call crunchy onion chicken. It is something that I have made for a really long time. I found it online. I want to say it was like on All Recipes years and years ago when my oldest was maybe a toddler, and I used to think that it was my favorite meal. So I'm going to be making that tonight with the chicken that we had left over. I'm not sure which order I'm putting these meals in. So this was the remainder of the chicken that we did not use from that package. So I had 1 package of chicken for the whole week, and this is going to be the second half of that package. There were 3 large chicken breasts. I cut them in half to make them thinner, and then we're going to season them really well and dip them in egg. And then we have a mixture. I usually use just the crunchy onions, but if you can see, I don't have very much. So I'm going to also add, I think it's Italian style breadcrumbs to this mixture as well. So nothing I've done before, but we're going to make it work, and I'm sure it will be delicious. So, and it's one of the, like, it's a very, very simple meal. You hardly, again, need any ingredients, so it's really nice. And it's been a while since I've made it, so we're gonna use what we have on hand, and it's gonna be a really good dinner. Now, I cannot remember, but for none of the recipes I find online include the yellow mustard, but I swear back in the day, that's what I had on my recipe card for this. So that's what I'm gonna do. I don't know how much, but I swear this was in the recipe. So I'm gonna add a little bit. And I feel like it is, I don't know, a teaspoon. So I feel like that's really not enough to really make a difference. So anyway, we have our eggs, we have the mustard, and I don't think I'm gonna add like milk or water or anything to it. I think it's gonna be enough. I'm just going to salt and pepper the chicken. The crunchy onions add a lot of flavoring, so I usually don't do a lot of seasoning on the actual chicken. I keep it pretty simple. You could do like paprika, you could do garlic if you wanted. I don't think I'm gonna do any of that tonight. Just keep it very simple. Okay. So for this, I guess I should mix it. I am gonna add a little bit of water. Now that we have that, I am going to do this mixture. So I'm gonna use all the crunchy onions I have. And really, it's not a measurement. It's almost like you're making a fried chicken, but you're gonna cook this in the oven, and this is like a nice topping that it adds. They don't stick well if you do not crumble them really nicely. You can put them like in a baggie if you want really, really fine crumbs. I don't usually care that much, so I get them as small as I can with my fingers, and we call it good enough. You could also like lay these in the pan and then just put this on top if you're not sure how much you really want to use. I've done that before when I don't have enough. Okay, so those are crushed pretty fine. I'm going to add in maybe half of these breadcrumbs. Yeah, we'll see. I have normal breadcrumbs too, which you could use, but I thought maybe I would add a little bit more seasoning to it by using the Italian style. Okay, so now we're just like you're normally flouring chicken. You'll dip it in the egg and then you'll roll it in that. And I'm putting it into a greased casserole dish, and then we'll pop it in the oven at 350 until it's cooked through. Let me bring you around so you can see a little better. I'm gonna get another casserole dish so I don't have to crowd them too. So we'll have 2 casserole dishes and more dishes, unfortunately. That's okay.
I have seen this recipe over the years be used in a handful of different ways. I've seen it on pork chops, which I feel like I always forget about, but that sounds really good. And I'm sure it would be very good on pork chops. The only tip that I really have for this is it should really be boneless, and probably, boneless, skinless, because it is very, very hard to eat around the bone with this recipe in particular. And you know what this almost reminds me of? Do you remember back in like the 90s, the shake and bake recipes? Now, it doesn't have that same flavor, but like the coating around it just reminds me of that. My mom used to make that for dinner, and I almost want to try that again because I don't remember what it tastes like. But yeah, this Now that I'm actually like watching me make this, that's what it reminds me of. Anyway, so I put those in the oven and I have the rolls, they're all done. I like to brush them with some melted butter whenever they come out of the oven, and that's what gives them a nice little glazed look. Because I was on a smaller budget, I did not want to run out and get any vegetables. We had run out. So what I did was I just served like a veggie tray that I had made earlier in the week. So that is what we had on the table with this as our veggie. This meal turned out fantastic, and it brought back all those memories of when I used to make it. It has been quite a while. I want to say maybe a couple years since I've made this chicken, and it is one of my all-time favorites. It's a very simple and easy meal, but the flavor, you can't really tell it's so simple.
I'm a little embarrassed to tell you what time it is, and I'm just starting a crock pot meal, but if you have been here for a while, you can expect this. So it is 2:15 and I need to get something going for dinner, and if I thought this through, I would just do it over the stove, but I have a bunch of other things to do, so I am going to quickly throw together basically the first thing I thought of, and hope that it gets done in time. I'm going to do like a chicken and dumpling style meal, but instead of dumplings, I have some extra wide egg noodles that I'm going to use. This week, we're stretching the budget as far as we can, so I don't want to use all this chicken. I want to use only half of it, and then I'll use the other half in another recipe. But I'm trying to do as much as I can with what I have on hand, and so there really wasn't a lot of planning that went into this week's meals. Anyway, so I am going to go ahead, throw this together in the crock pot just really quickly and get dinner going, because like I said, it's after 2 and I'm hoping to eat about 6-ish, so I'm gonna put this on high. Also, I'm not going to put the noodles in here. I don't usually do that, and actually I usually will make them from scratch, but I'm not doing that today. I'm just trying to be as quick as possible and very minimal effort, so I'm going to use what I have. I don't even think I'll use the whole bag, but we'll just kind of see. But I'm going to make those separately on the stove. I'll boil them, and I'm going to cook the chicken with some butter, parsley, salt, pepper, some garlic, and then the cream of chicken. This is a recipe that I have been making since my oldest 2 were really little, when I was a new mom and I was a new wife, and I didn't have a ton of experience with cooking. This was something that I'm sure I came across on like Pinterest or something, and it was so easy, and it was such a lifesaver in those early days when you don't know much about cooking and you just have little ones. You want to throw them in the crock pot really quick. And it's delicious. It's something that I've repeatedly gone back to over the years. So it is still a lifesaver, even though those little babies are, one of them is about to turn 16. So it has been a while that I'm still making this. Okay, there are no measurements. I did 2 large chicken breasts in the crock pot because, like I said, I want to save the other 3 for another meal, and I know that I don't really need 3 in this. So I did 2 large chicken breasts, 2 cans of cream of chicken. I'm gonna do maybe half a stick of butter, and then salt, pepper, parsley, and garlic. And there's not measurements that go along with that. Just measure with your heart, and that will be good enough. Now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I usually add a little bit of some chicken broth, so I will add a little bit of that. And if you're going to be cooking it for like all day while you're at work or something, you might want to add a little bit more liquid to it. I'm not gonna have all day, so I will add a little bit, but not as much as I normally do if I were to be cooking it all day. This is just some chicken bone broth that I made the other day. So I'm gonna use a little bit of that. And, oh, the butter. So if you have more chicken or you're cooking it all day, you have a larger portion than what I have, you can put in the whole stick of butter. But because it's kind of a smaller portion, since I'm going to be putting it on top of noodles, I'm just going to do the 1/2 of a stick of butter, and that is it. Give it a little, honestly, there's not much mixing, but I'll mix it up a little bit to get the seasoning all over, and then I'm going to go turn it on. And hopefully in 4-ish hours, we will have dinner ready. Okay, here is what the crock pot looks like before I start it. So it's really not that mixed together, and that's perfectly fine. It will cook just fine. I just kind of mixed it up a little tiny bit to get the seasoning a little bit more incorporated, but don't have to worry about it too much. Okay, I will see you in 4-ish hours. It's definitely not going to be that long, more like 3.5. We're just now at 4 hours being in the crock pot. However, I turned it off about an hour ago because this was like rattling and stuff, and I had never actually seen that before. So I turned it off because I didn't really know. I didn't know if it was like overheating, but I believe it's done. So that is our chicken. It smells amazing. I'm going to shred it up, and then I have the pot going for the noodles, and then I'm just going to serve those over the noodles. Sometimes when I make this recipe, the original recipe for this was a chicken and dumplings recipe, and I would cut up pieces of biscuits from just the can into small pieces, and it would make a really great dumpling. So I haven't done that in a while, but that is always a great addition. Hope these, oh yeah, I hope they were done in 3.5 hours, but yeah, it's totally done, shreddable. Now you could, instead of doing like noodles, my kids love those thick egg noodles, like in the freezer section of the store. They love those. If you have ever made those, I always call them like southern noodles or country noodles. They're like homemade, they're thicker, and you put them in and it really thickens up the dish. You could do stuff like that. I love doing that kind of stuff this time of year. It's like one of those comfort meals for sure. You could do that. You could do dumplings. I am just trying to hurry and get dinner on the table. It's been a day. So I just have some noodles going, and it's fast and easy, and that will do. So I got the chicken all shredded up. I'm gonna put it back in the crock pot and then mix it all up, get it nice and coated. Here is how dinner turned out. It was a quick and easy dinner, but again, it was a delicious favorite of ours. I topped it with a little bit of parsley, and usually I will serve this with like a side of steamed green beans, so I did do that.
I like to, my mom as a kid, she always served like this type of food with butter bread. And so I like doing that often too. Our next meal is taco bowls. This is a family favorite of ours and I make it constantly. So you've probably seen me make this so many times on my channel because I do. My kids constantly are asking for this. It's a very easy dish to make and I take it a little step further and make it very cheap as well. I like to get the chicken bone and or leg and thigh quarters. They're bone and skin on, but for an entire, I think it's 10 pounds, it's only like 5, 6. I think it's gone up, so it might be like $7 now, but it is a really good deal, and I can make a couple different recipes, a couple different meals out of that one bag. So I like buying it and using it for recipes like this. This recipe can also be done in a crock pot if you're wanting to have that cook low and slow while you're at work. I am always home. We homeschool, so I'm always here, and I like to do it on the stove whenever I can, and I do cook it pretty low and slow for at least an hour. So what I'm doing is I have chicken going with a tiny bit of oil at the bottom of the pan, and then while that is cooking, I will add in a bunch of different seasonings like cumin, paprika, chili powder, garlic, onion powder, salt, and pepper. You can also use a taco seasoning packet if you'd like. And then I will put in, it kind of depends. Sometimes I'll use Rotel. I like using some salsa if we have on hand. So I did have half a jar of salsa that I put in, and then I will top with either a bouillon cube and some water, which is what I did. Or if you have broth on hand, you can put the broth in. Then you'll put the lid on and get all those flavors nice and incorporated. So I have had it cook low and slow, and this is very sped up. And I took the chicken out. I waited for it to cool down. This is a bag of bones that I like to keep. So I like to keep to make broth for various things. I'll keep the veggies and stuff like that too. And then I just put that in the freezer. So anyway, you will put the lid on. I shredded it after it was cooled down, and then I added the shredded chicken back into the broth and juices that it made. Now I am just making the tacos how everybody wants them. I chopped up a bunch of vegetables, and I have, a variety of toppings all assorted for everybody to be able to make their own. I made just some very simple white rice on the side, and that is, they're not in bowls. I like to call these taco bowls, and they're just not always in bowls. And I asked my daughter, I like to let my kids choose so they feel like they have a say in a lot of our meals and stuff. And if they're not really picking the meals, sometimes I'll ask, how do they want them? So I asked her if she wanted tacos or, quesadillas or just like a burrito bowl type of style, and that is what she chose. So I am basically piling all of this on the tortilla, and then we eat it with a fork until it gets to a certain amount, and then we eat it like a burrito. So that is what dinner was. It is a weekly thing in here. It is a part of our weekly rotation because it is really that good. This next meal has slowly been one of our new favorites as well. I started making this, and it's what I call lightly breaded chicken. So I started doing that because we did not buy like chicken nuggets one day for lunch, and my kids really wanted chicken nuggets. So what I did was I kind of just made chicken tenders just at home, and I just lightly breaded them, and they ended up being a huge hit. And my kids have repeatedly asked me to make them. We've since made like chicken sandwiches out of them, and that is really good too. But I wanted to mix it up. So one of my kids' favorites is chicken tenders with mashed potatoes and gravy. And so almost like a KFC bowl type of thing. So anyway, that is what we're making today. I seasoned the chicken and I had it in the fridge for most of the day. I like having meals like that where I can season or prepare earlier in the day when I have somewhat of a break during school or whatever we're working on. And then I can come back later on and it's marinated or whatever it is that I'm working on. I can then just pick up right where I left off. So I like doing that, and I went ahead, I seasoned the chicken and I put that in the fridge. You can really use any seasoning. A lot of times I will use like we have a chicken seasoning, so I use that, salt, pepper, sometimes garlic, paprika, whatever you're wanting to use will work just fine. So I have that now out, and I am just lightly breading that, and I'm not dipping it in egg or anything like that. I have it in some plain breadcrumbs and flour, and that's literally it. I already seasoned them, so I did not season the flour. And then I put it into a really hot skillet with a pat of butter and a little bit of oil, and I cook those up, and it is crunchy, but it is not like an over what is it, like a coating that's like really thick like you would get at KFC, which I really like. Sometimes that can be a little too much, and we're really enjoying just it being lightly breaded. So that's what this is. I already have the mashed potatoes done, and those were just a very basic mashed potato. I made a simple brown gravy and Theo's favorite side, which is corn. So we had what is basically like a KFC bowl, and it is a fun little twist, and my kids really enjoyed it. Our next meal is the chili that I always make on my channel, and I know you're gonna get sick of me making it, but it is such an easy thing, and it's so simple. There's so little ingredients. They're very cheap, and I love having a huge full crock pot of it that we can eat on for leftovers throughout the week, and it's so easy. So I'm sorry you're gonna get sick of me making it, but it is just too easy to not have it on repeat. I have ground turkey in the crock pot. I like buying that. It is sometimes cheaper, and so I like adding that into meals like this. So I have that already made, and it's in the crock pot. You do not have to make the saute like the vegetables ahead of time. I like having that little added flavor of like the charred vegetables. So sometimes if I have the time, I will do that. So I had an onion that was diced up and a green bell pepper that I diced up, and I just sauteed that until it started to brown, and then I put it in the crock pot. Of course, you add the chili seasoning. I always use these mixed chili beans, and they're in chili sauce, so I will add in the entire can. I usually use about 3 cans of that. And I know everybody makes chili so differently. There's a recipe that I want to say it's my mom, but I'm not really sure who uses it. It's like a tomato-based recipe, and it's very good, but sometimes, like my husband, he has terrible heartburn, and the tomato-based recipes usually will do that. So I just added in a can of diced tomatoes and then some chili powder. I like doing just the diced tomatoes and then having more of a beef broth flavoring to like a base instead of the tomato base. So I will add in some beef broth, and then I always add in a can of the diced chilies too. But I had opened it upside down, so I was like trying to show you, and it was starting to drip, but that's what that was. Anyway, and I added in a can of corn. I don't always do that, but you just do whatever you have and give it a good mix, and that is how it turned out. Again, it was such a simple dish, and it makes so much, so that's kind of one of my go-to things throughout the fall and winter. But anyway, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for another meal video. Like I said, stick around because I am planning to go more in depth for this budget-friendly meal challenge that I'm on. But anyway, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.